Hey, everybody. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Ask the Service Provider. Today, we're here with Becky Campbell, who is a mental health specialist. Is that your title? What do you go by?
I'm a certified behavioral health coach, life coach, and wellness coach. Kind of several different hats with a mental health background.
With a mental health background. Got it.
Mhm.
I mean, so Becky and I met, oh my goodness. And the thing is, like, we really didn't even meet. We began having conversations, was
Yeah.
about 2 years ago?
Oh, it's longer than that.
It was
Yeah.
longer than that,
Yeah.
3,
Yeah.
4 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
Something like that. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And so I guess Becky has been a part of my life for 4 years now and has been a huge help and resource in helping me to navigate the industry of, my industry and traveling and dealing, functioning in high stress environments, but they became so natural to me that I didn't even perceive them as high stress environments. Um, but those environments were so natural when I came home, that then became a high stress environment. And so there's so many different things that I began to learn about myself as I was working and traveling. Um, and I was mentally going places where I didn't necessarily want to or need to go. And Becky just had the understanding, the wherewithal to help coach me through the process of dealing with some of my things. And
Mhm.
so, you know, I want to tell everybody and just say thank you, Becky, for this 4-year relationship that we've had. But right now we're dealing with COVID-19 and the quarantining aspect of everything going on. And I know a lot of people are stressed. A lot of people are feeling anxiety. A lot of people, not just about being home, but their anxiety about their work and what life is going to look like after all of this. So let's talk on that for a moment.
Okay. And I want to say thank you. It's been a privilege to watch you birth your company. I feel like I've been a tiny part of that.
You
Or
definitely
at least your biggest cheerleader, or
have.
one of them. Yeah, when you and I first started talking about doing this interview, if you will, COVID-19 wasn't on the map. And the landscape has definitely changed. And in your industry, so many folks aren't working because shows have been shut down for various reasons. And there's a level of anxiety, I think, worldwide, globally. And maybe some of us aren't used to it. And especially if we're used to being really busy, as it can happen in your industry, you turn and burn, you got a show to put on, and then you come home, you turn around, you have another show, and then all of a sudden, nothing. It can be really challenging to, to find peace, unless, and that's different for everyone. You and I talked about having some sort of tradition or an anchor to help us through this. And so that's important. One of the things that I do in my work is I teach mindfulness-based stress reduction. And those are tools that we can all learn that we have within us. Especially now, because being a health and wellness coach, one of the things that I'm aware of is that when we experience undue stress, and that's something you and I talked about, even if we're having fun doing it and you're putting on a show, if your body's stressed, it is in the fight or flight part of your body, and it's dumping hormones into your system that can challenge your immune system. None of us want our immune systems challenged right now. So learning ways to downregulate that stress. We all have stress. It's a part of life. It's a part of what can motivate it. It's not that it's bad. It's how we handle it and learning tools to downregulate. So that's a bit of what I do, and especially now during the virus, is just finding out what's working for you. How are you coping? What are your connections? A lot of people are isolated, people who live alone. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? And how are you exercising? You know, those basics, you know, how are you taking care of your physical body?
And so one of the things, like you see that I'm out here outside right now, I typically work indoors in my office, my home office. And in the mornings when it's so nice and relaxing, I have the birds chirping. Nobody's cutting grass right now, which is good for the interview. But this is part of my process as well, you know, to kind of have that stress reduction. I know I didn't sleep well last night. I stayed up pretty late with one of our networking events that we put on. But this morning I did wake up and work out with a virtual workout session that I do on Wednesday mornings. But then it's like rolling into the office, you know, there's the applying for the loans and other things. And one thing, you know, it's just trying to figure out how to navigate this and just trying to remain at peace. You know, the kids are homeschooling now. My wife has her business and managing that and navigating that. And so, yes, there's trying to understand how I function and how I work in this new environment, this unknown or not experienced environment. Trying to do my best, you know?
Right. It's all an unknown for so many people. And like you now, with your children at home, your wife at home, and having to navigate the school system, that's another stressor for a lot of parents. I had a parent last week say, I'm quitting second grade. I'm done. This is it. She was so stressed out about trying to navigate the
second grade a long time ago. I don't want to do it again.
Yeah. So another thing that I like to do is have people, there's this fun little test. It's called Character Strengths, and it's free. I believe it's put out by Harvard, but I'm not sure. And of course, they want you to pay for more in depth, but the free one is enough. And there's 25 character strengths, and on there they list your top 5, well, all 25, but it's really important to know what are our strengths, how can we use them to show up for us now, and where are the places where maybe we're not so strong that's tripping us up that we can boost up. So it's all about awareness.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Yeah, the awareness side of it. And so also, especially in dealing with relationships, whether they're home relationships or work relationships, understanding where you're strong, where your strengths are, but you can also understand where you aren't as strong, or you may have a need for more support. And then that's where you can rely on your partner or coworker or others to help balance that load, and you can be that for someone else. You know, I understand where some of my weaknesses are, and I feel like I'm an observant person to recognize those in others, areas of that where there's room for improvement. And as a coach or just a friend, I try to help in those spaces. And you know, I really feel like even this conversation that you and I are having is a means to be able to do that. You know, not everyone would necessarily feel comfortable having a conversation. And so by overhearing us in this, they're also gaining for themselves. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And you mentioned relationships. That's a whole new level of togetherness during the COVID-19. So that's where communication is key. Learning how to downregulate our anxiety and stress responses. I love learning about the brain. We have this little place in our brain called the amygdala, and it it's the seat of our emotions. And so when you find out that all of a sudden you've just flipped your lid or something, and maybe in a way you didn't want to, that's called an amygdala hijack. And then your prefrontal cortex, which is your thinking brain, your pragmatic brain, goes offline. So I think many of us can relate to that. Well, in this season of a lot of togetherness, it's important to be aware of our triggers and to really take our space and move back. And then, like you said, understanding your partner's strengths and their weaknesses, and them understanding yours as well. So, and hey, we're all in this boat that we've never been taught how to ride.
Right. Yeah. But you know, and that's one thing we were talking about before we were recording. Yeah, you still got to pedal. You still got to think forward progress. You still got to think, and even sometimes forward progress is just being still. You know, you can't take control of a wave that may be too big. So sometimes being still that is forward progress as well, and gathering your thoughts, gathering your idea of where you want to go, and thinking about how to achieve it instead of just constantly moving. It's constantly going forward, because you could be going in the wrong direction. Yeah.
And you're right, that idea of stillness, of being able to pause, gives our brain time to get back online. We get overloaded of, how am I going to pay the bills? Too much togetherness. We're feeling on edge. Being able to pause, sit back, and do some breathing strategies, or whatever it is you do at home. You went and worked out this morning. I lost you. Are you there?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm still here.
Oh, that's all right. And helping us to get centered so that our logical thinking brain can come on. And that's so important. And it's a learned skill, and everybody can learn it.
So what would you say is a first step in doing that, in trying to learn some of those skills or those behavior modification tools? What are some of those?
I think first, a desire to learn, a desire to want to make some change. Sometimes we want to make changes, but we don't know how. We don't know how to get to A to B. So my role as a coach is, we look at the landscape. You're here, you want to be there. Let's try some tools. Awareness, like you said, you've mentioned it several times, just being aware. Well, awareness comes again with practice, because we don't know what we don't know. So once we start being aware, and then breaking down, I consider progress 3 steps forward and 2 steps back. And we learn as much about ourselves as going forward as we do stepping back. So it's a very non-judgmental approach.
Yeah, I like that you said that. That's actually in my fraternity, pledging my fraternity, we did this dance, and it's called the Ape Walk. And you're in line with your brothers, and you're moving forward, right? But like you said, it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And by being in line and in sync with my brothers, and everybody would put their own flair on the dance. It wasn't like, it wasn't like completely uniform. Some people would throw a spin, some people would kick their leg higher or do a split, all this. But I like that, because it also shows our uniqueness. We're all different. And it makes me think about our industry, my industry as well. It's like, we're all different, but if we join together and understand that it's about forward progress, we take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, we're still moving forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's celebrating the uniqueness, not just of what it is that you do in your industry. I mean, you can't all be projectionists, right?
Right.
but also how the other people have different ways of approaching what they do and learning how to work together, and appreciating other people's gifts and approaches. And so I think there's a level too of, the word happiness. I don't know. I think it's been overrated as we have to be happy. We have to be happy. I think content and at peace, because we're going to have moments in our life that are extremely happy, and we're going to have moments in our lives that are really sad and devastating and losses. Can we have peace and contentment through that as we navigate that? And so being able to somehow find peace in the midst of this. And everybody's in a different situation. Some people have had, if not themselves, had family members severely impacted, if not died. Some people know people who have had that. So, that's the reality of what we're dealing with now, which is, it's different for everyone. Everyone has their own experience in this.
Mm-hmm. And I know we're dealing with one of our industry members, someone I know personally. He's been experiencing coronavirus symptoms, and we've been checking in on him, making sure that he's okay. But for me personally, it's like I may not be dealing with those symptoms myself, but I care so much about him that I want to see him do well. I want to see him make it through. And I think that a lot of that just comes from that time that we spend together on the road, that time that we spend building things, relying on one another, building those relationships in addition to the sets that we do and the service that we provide for so many different clients, and wanting to look out for one another as well so that we can be successful as a team. And I think that's one of the most valuable things that we have about this industry.
Well, and it shows your compassion and caring. You work closely with people, you get connected to them, and you care.
Yeah, I definitely do.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. So, I mean, so what is a good way for people to kind of get in contact with you if they're interested in some of the coaching or having a conversation with you? Is there a way for people to reach out?
They can call me. They can go to my website, BeckyCampbell.com, all one word, all lowercase. Yeah, I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, because you've been like I mentioned before, you've been a great help for me for the past 4 years. I can't even believe it's been that long. I think about how old my kids are, and then 4 years ago from that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I really appreciate your transparency in I know single people in your industry. I don't know any married people in your industry. A lot of my background is military, so there's a lot of on the road and separation there.
A lot of similarities.
A lot of similarities. And I appreciate your transparency in sharing with me what life is like for you, and in an industry that you absolutely love. You have such passion for it.
Yeah.
And for your family.
I do, for both.
Yes.
And trying to figure out and make them being able to integrate both of them into my life and maintain both of them. It's been a challenge, but it's important for me to figure it out. One of the reasons why it's so important for me to figure it out is so that I can help others know how to do it and figure it out for themselves.
And then while it may not be much of an issue right now with the shelter at home, but there's the taking care of oneself on the road with the way your deadlines and schedules and shows have to be, that can be really challenging. You know, it's really easy to say, are you eating 3 times a day? Maybe not, you know? So finding ways
And the lack
that,
of physical activity at times.
yes, yes. So finding ways to work that into a schedule that's workable for that particular person. And that's the thing about coaching is it's so individualized.
Yeah.
It's not one template fits all, except that we all need to eat well. We all need to exercise, move our bodies. I like to say movement. And we all need good sleep.
That's exactly what my personal trainer says. You know, we have our movement Wednesdays. It's about getting up and just being active.
Yeah, yeah. And there's so many ways that I've learned since I've been working from a desk for years now. How can we give our bodies movement in a way that's beneficial while you're sitting behind a screen for 6 hours or 8 hours or however long you do? There are things that can be done. You just have to remember to do them. Mm-hmm. But we tend to think, oh, I can't go to the gym, so I'm not moving at all. So little things, but that's a moot point right now. I think there aren't any shows going on, are there?
There are no shows going on.
There are no shows going on.
But so, and that being said, it's a way for me to create opportunities, create shows, right? So we were talking about awareness, being aware of yourself, being aware of your strengths, being aware of what you're capable of, having knowledge of the value that you bring. And so I've been able to pick up two new clients doing virtual webinars with them.
Nice.
You know, because they are skilled at what they do. They know what they know, but the technology side, that's not their strong suit. So now trying to manage all of that and thinking about presenting content can be stressful. So I've made new contacts and have new clients where it's like, allow me to take care of that for you, and you just be you. You just present as you do. And they've been very receptive. So, you know, I think a huge part of that is just understanding that sometimes you have to be fluid. You know, you have to be like water. You can't be so solid and so rigid and stuck in your ways. You have to learn how to evolve and adjust.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what does water do in the midst of a block or a challenge? It goes around it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're thinking outside the box.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or thinking outside of the box, but then also recognizing what's being presented to me and how I can be of assistance. How can I serve? What do I possess that can serve someone else? And there's value in that, and value that they're willing to pay for.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about mental health during this COVID time. You and I were having a conversation before you started recording about everybody is experiencing this differently. Some people are feeling a bit more anxious. There can be some depression going on. Some people are really good at self-scheduling themselves, you know, daily routine. Other people are better at external scheduling, so therefore, why get out of bed type thing. So it's all across the gamut. And again, it's awareness and not being afraid to ask for help. And I think I would be amiss for not bringing that up. So, gosh, I don't have it on me right now. If you want me to, you don't have a chat box here. Okay.
I don't, but you can definitely send that to me and I'll make sure to attach it with this.
Yeah, the American Anxiety and Depression Society, a lot of their information now is how to cope for COVID. through COVID. And, you know, it's also for parents with children, how to deal with stress. I mean, there's so much good information on there. And I think it's safe to say that many of us are feeling a bit more anxious. You know, I tend to do emergencies really well, and I have to admit, I'm feeling a little bit more anxious, you know. So just noticing that.
And then I guess through that, that's part of some of the stress management that you were talking about before. But more importantly, understanding when you've gotten to that point that you can't do this on your own, you need to reach out to someone else.
Yeah, asking for help. Boy, that's huge. There's also another link I will send to you. It's an article through the, of all things, the Harvard Business Journal, on that emotion you're feeling is grief. And it's a very short article on the idea of collective grief and what's going on now, and that we could have these emotions all over the board, and we're not used to feeling maybe grief or collective grief because we've got so much news coming in, the world's being impacted. So just being able to name those, if that's applicable, and be aware of it. That's the beginning of all stress reduction.
Perfect. Well, Becky, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us today on Ask the Service Provider. As I mentioned, you've meant so much to me, and I know that you are a valuable resource to many others, and I know that you can be a valuable resource to more people in this industry that you know so well.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Be safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye.